Welcome back, Warriors. It's me, Linda B. Thank you all so much for joining me here tonight for another live stream. I have my live streams Mondays through Thursdays at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. As you all know, we are doing a episodic series on race wars. It's a Turning Point USA documentary, executive produced by Charlie Kirk. And I have a guest with me tonight. I may have two guests. But I am going to go ahead and bring in Derek with SOB. Are you serious? Welcome again, Derek.
Thank you, Linda. I'm excited.
Excellent. So what we're going to be doing is doing commentary on this race wars, and it's going to be talking a lot about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Now, we know that there's been some history that we were given in school, but lately other things have been unearthed about the late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and who he really was and what he actually believed, and a little bit more insight into the actual hidden part of the civil rights movement. That's what we'll be talking about today. You guys don't forget to smash like, comment, share, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Hit all notifications. Stick around to the end. And I am going to say hello to some of my people in the chat. June Stanley. Hello, June. Hello. Hey, Philip Patriot. Hi, Iron Ear. Hello there. And who else do we have? All right. Fed Up and Iron. Very good. Let's see. Did I see my husband in here? He's not in here yet. Okay. All right. We're going to go ahead and get started with a word of prayer. Dear God, in Jesus' name, we thank you so much for this opportunity to come before you and share truth with your people. And we pray for international revival. We pray for peace. Father, we ask for unity in the body of Christ. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. All right.
Amen.
Let's get it started. Got to go ahead here. And maybe MJ will join us in a few moments. So let's go ahead.
I just sent him a link, so he'll be joining us shortly.
Okay. Excellent. Let's go ahead and get going.
Violent resistance ever witnessed, not only in America, but anywhere in the Western world.
King was a pastor by title. He was a reverend by title. But his worldview, he was a humanist. He was a globalist. He was more a Buddhist than he was a Christian. Matter of fact, King spent a Palm Sunday sermon at Dexter Avenue Baptist Church preaching not about the resurrection of Christ. He was preaching about the virtues of Mahatma Gandhi and showing humanity the Mahatma Gandhi. About the
I think I lost some audio or something.
He was a globalist, a pastor by title. He was a reverend by title. But his worldview, he was a humanist. He was a globalist. He was more a Buddhist than he was a Christian. Matter of fact, King spent a Palm Sunday sermon at Dexter Avenue Baptist Church preaching not about the resurrection of Christ. He was preaching about the virtues of Mahatma Gandhi and showing humanity the next way to go to bring everything together. Matter of fact, let me read to you a quote that he actually preached from that sermon. Again, this is at Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, Montgomery, Alabama. King had this to say. He said, "I believe this man, that is Mahatma Gandhi, more than anybody else in the modern world, caught the spirit of Jesus Christ and lived it more completely in his life. His name was Gandhi, Mohandas K. Gandhi."
I came to Gandhi in the same setting in theological seminary days. I had heard of Gandhi, but I remembered hearing a message by the president of Howard University, Dr. Mordecai Johnson, who had just returned from India. He spoke in Philadelphia on his trip to India and the whole philosophy of Gandhi and passive and nonviolent resistance. And I was so deeply moved by the message that I went away and bought several books on Gandhian technique. And at that point, I became deeply influenced by Gandhi, never realizing that I would live in a situation where it would be useful to me.
I'm going to pause for a moment, guys, because I want to introduce again, MJ with WTF for Real. Thank you for joining us tonight, MJ. Now we're doing this part 2. It's called Plantation to Plantation, and it's dealing with more Dr. King than anything, like the underpinnings behind the civil rights movement, what he actually believed. Dr. King himself, was he really a Christian? And we just saw this little part that he was more of a Buddhist than anything. So really what we've been given growing up is not really true. So I'm going to go ahead and get back into it, and then I'm going to pause intermittently for commentary, and we're just going to keep the commentary a little short, but I want you to really give me your thoughts, because I'm going to try to get through the whole video. All right.
Let's move back here.
Marxists understood that if we are going to get control of the black community, we have to go through the church. Church meaning the black preacher. Martin Luther King Jr. was everything they could hope for. Ivy League education, extraordinarily intelligent, charismatic. Whether you like him or not, he's brave. Beautiful wife, beautiful family. And because King had gone to Boston University, he was very, very comfortable around the upper elite white people. And he was willing and wanted to be extraordinarily popular. And they used his narcissism to get him to do many, many things. So King comes in, and the Montgomery bus boycott gets King on the cover of Time magazine, even though the bus boycott didn't end segregation on the buses.
What ended up happening, especially as it pertains to the Montgomery bus boycott, was the actual application of proper law. It was targeted and aimed at a public bus system that was supposed to be used for the public, right? And blacks, taxpayers, just like whites were taxpayers, were unfairly treated in this public system. So because of that, there were public levers, legislative policy that needed to be examined and tested for how blacks were treated in that space.
But when the United citizens in Montgomery were taken from the bus and carried to jail and arrested because she refused to get up to give her seat to a white person.
That was the day that we started a bus protest which literally electrified the nation.
Truth be told, Rosa Parks was a plant. She was the plan of the NAACP to participate in the activity that she participated in regarding the bus boycott. She grew up, was educated at a girls' school, and eventually would find herself at this Highlands school in Tennessee. This school was known for kind of creating activists, socialists. Some even say that the school in particular was funded by communists. There was a young lady, in fact, months earlier who was involved in the same activity that Rosa Parks is now known for. Her name is Claudette Colvin. Claudette was a 15-year-old girl who got on the bus. Same situation, was told to give up her seat. She did not want to and was pulled off the bus. Was taken in by police in the police car with these very racist officers. She underwent some pretty brutal treatment. The NAACP comes by and begin talking with her, and truth be told, they just thought that she was not a sympathetic enough figure to be utilized in the way that Rosa was. And so her story has gone untold until more recently. It went to the Supreme Court. We got a positive verdict. What's interesting about the verdict in the Browder v. Gale case is that Rosa Parks' name is not on any of the litigation. I think that's of note because the person that gets all of the credit for, for desegregating the buses is the act of Rosa Parks.
I got to stop right there because it seems to me that, we live in a world where people that get the credit for everything really didn't do the thing or do anything good. And the person that should have got the credit didn't get the credit. So I'm going to let one of you guys chime in because that is just so bothersome. So it looks like Rosa Parks was an actual plant. Okay. And we already know that Martin Luther King Jr. did not really believe. I don't know if it gets into this part about Martin Luther King's belief system other than the fact that he was more of a Buddhist. But I want to just clarify that the man did not believe in the divinity of Jesus Christ. He did not believe in the virgin birth. He did not believe in the resurrection. Okay. There's this book called And the Walls Came Tumbling Down by Ralph Abernathy. He talks about his many orgies and his lifestyle. The man, in some cases, he has been briefly mentioned as fluid. I'll leave that there. I'll leave that there. So you guys chime in on what you've heard so far.
I'll just say, for me, and I'll just keep it super brief. Is one thing I hate, and I know hate is a strong word, but one thing I really can't stand is being lied to. And so, to be taught, one thing all our life, and then for the truth to finally come out that it was all, propaganda. It just speaks to like the validity of it. And it's like, I'd rather, and that's why I don't put a lot of stock in a lot of the things from the past, and I don't vacillate over it. I just look at what we're doing right now and just move forward, and that's really where I'm at with it. Cause honestly, none of it was real.
Exactly. What do you say, Derek?
I remember when social media really became a thing, and it seemed like when Twitter really exploded that I just got fed up with there's no more sources for news stories, and you just the first one to say something, you worry about apologizing later. Mm-hmm. But then you sit here just in awe of something you just have been told your whole life's what is factual, and it's being uncovered as a total blatant lie. And it makes you question everything you've ever known or thought of, whether it was newsworthy or in a history book, as what are they just telling me what they want me to know? What is the real story? What is the real truth? And will it ever be told?
Exactly. I'm like MJ, but you said, what? There's no telling what we've been fed before that's not true. So let me just focus on what it is right now in front of me.
Right. What am I doing now? I'm focused on right now. Whatever happened. It's in the past. We just need to, stop looking back. I mean, everybody know that was number one. Don't look back. What happens if you look back? And everybody's always trying to spin the block on these things, on these topics that are so, you can hold on to the history, but we need to focus on the present and what we're doing now. I think society is way behind where we could be by now if we started just looking forward. It's toxic at this point.
Absolutely. I'm going to go ahead and finish it. Thank you guys for your comments. All right, let's get into it.
A year or more, riders would eventually utilize a neighbor, a friend. They would get their own bikes and travel to where they needed to be rather than utilizing the bus system. I remember studying this a while back. It was somewhere in the neighborhood of about $30,000 a day that the system, in today's dollars, that the bus system was losing every day that the black riders decided not to ride the buses.
Yeah, it was just this thing that we believed what we saw on television, and we thought this stuff was all just done by osmosis. No, this was staged. And it was staged in coordination with the Russians and with the Marxists. The Russians wanted to use propaganda to show that America was a hypocritical nation, that they hated black people, and that all the races of color around the world, if you become a democratic nation, you're going to be treated the same way as they treat black people in America. So Martin Luther King Jr. and his group would go down and they would stalk out these small towns and they would find the cruelest, meanest police officer or sheriff that they could find. And they would go in and they would intentionally agitate, intentionally go in and break trespassing charges, march without a petition or a court order. And then when these police would come out and they would try to enforce the law, they would passively resist. And they would have the cameras there. And they would call the New York Times, they would call the Washington Post, and they'd be all there with the cameras getting ready to watch this staged performance that Kingdom is setting on and saying that this is just brutality.
This isn't about politics. It's about jobs, paychecks, and Georgia's future. If Senator...
When they went to Birmingham, he came there with the cameras and whatnot, and the black people said, we don't want no parts of this. You're not even from here. Why are you coming out here with all of these problems, starting all of this chaos? They got in such a tizzy because they had to put on the show that James Bevel went to the schools and got children out of the schools and told the children to come do this march. They were going to give them a picnic. They was going to feed them, And the children came out of the school and marched into a cauldron of dogs and water hoses from Bull Connor. And they called it the Children's March, like these children voluntarily did this. No, Kingdom tricked these children into this. And then they had the cameras and the newspapers and everything take it right back to Washington and to New York and send it all over the world as propaganda that this is how the South is, and this is how virtuous Martin Luther King Jr. and brave King and all the rest of them are. And this is how racist America is. And it went all over the world, and it was all staged. I want more, I want more, I want more. What did King say? We will never be satisfied. Not until justice rolls down like water and righteousness like a mighty stream. That's a fancy way of saying never. Never satisfied. When Jesus Christ said, my peace I leave with you. You know, I'll give you a peace that transcends all understanding. No justice, no peace. Never satisfied. Constant revolution. Isn't that Trotsky? Revolution without end.
He is an icon. As you know, he's worshipped. I will say this, many of the things that he said that black people ignore today are the kinds of things that we ought to be embracing. For example, he said he believed in a colorblind society. He believed in a society where people are evaluated based on content of character, not color of skin. That's completely rejected by the whole DEI movement. The first time Gallup asked white people if they would vote for a black person for president was in the 50s.
Okay.
And the majority of them said, are you kidding? Now only a tiny percent of white people said they would not vote for a black person who was qualified. The percentage of people who are fine with interracial couples has never been smaller. And that's supposed to be the big taboo. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. About 20% or so of marriages in America, they are mixed marriages or interracial marriages. Nobody cares.
Many people think that it all began with the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Well, that was a fine act to get rid of the segregation laws in the South. But the cold fact is that the percentage of blacks who had professional occupations doubled from 1954 to 1964. That is in the decade ending at the time that the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was passed.
History is happening now. It is happening in this moment, and we are a part of it because history happens when we answer the great call of Dr. King, what are we doing for others?
I'm going to pause a little bit there because, I'm going to pause. You guys jump in because I noticed that liberals really do like Dr. King. And I did not know that everything had such communist underpinnings. You know, like I saw where people like Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King, and others actually went to communist training camps. I don't know if you guys heard anything about that. And I was like, what? What are they doing at a communist training camp? Jump in. I'm just like,
it's so funny, and not to make this political, but it's so funny. It's not funny, but it's funny watching this, and I'm like, how things have not changed, and it looks so familiar. You know, the things that are staged you know, the aggression, the aggression on the left. And I think offline, I know we've had these types of conversations, just the aggression and just overt aggression. And it's like that organized chaos. It's insane, and it's so funny because I know people out west on the West Coast. Mm-hmm. They do not think like some of the people on this in this neck of the woods, on the east.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
Being able, and I think about, being able to spread that propaganda out west, out in the Midwest, where no one cares, but they made it a thing, and they pull on the heartstrings of people, and that's where you get a movement.
And I didn't realize that the protests back then during the civil rights movement, I did not realize that people were planted. I did not realize
it's
the
crazy.
kids were pushed out of school, and that they did not have a permit to protest. There was, you have to have permits. They did not get one. And that in and of itself was like against the law. That's against the law if you're supposed to have a permit to do that. They did not have one, knowing full well that you're probably going to get beaten. And all of these things. Not that I agree with the beatings. I thought they were wrong. The dogs, the hoses, and all of that. Absolutely satanic. However, it was not. It was planned. It was planned. It was staged. It was not organic. Like
the sad part is those people. A lot of those people were just manipulated into doing that, and that's the worst part. Manipulating your own people into destruction, and into, beatings and being hosed. Like they had no idea that was going to happen. I'd be angry too.
And manipulating your own people is one thing, but what I just can't get over is the kids.
Yes.
Bringing the kids into it.
Yeah. That's where I draw the line.
There's a special place in hell for people that bring kids into something like that, knowingly what they're about to get into. I'm a protector. I see stuff like that. My blood starts boiling.
Yeah. I got a 2-piece for them.
I know. I'm just like, you told them you're going to give them lunch. Just come with us. They probably think it's like a field trip or something. And, you got all these dogs being sicked on you and all of that. That is crazy.
It's insane.
It's awful. So we're going to get back to it, guys. We're going to get back to it because this is real stuff here. All right, let's get back.
Judge a society not just by the people they produce, but the people that they honor. And now look at who we're honoring. And then when all the rest of the information comes out about Martin Luther King Jr., what he was doing, 45 girlfriends, excommunicated from the National Baptist Convention, which was basically at that time the black church, because he started a riot on the convention floor trying to take it over for the civil rights movement and killed a black preacher on the floor.
Wow.
He had to start his own religion, the Progressive National Baptist Convention, because he was kicked out of the National Baptist Convention. Many people don't know that. The man out clause in welfare. Yeah, they put it in. Lyndon Johnson wanted to use the money from the federal government to put the black man back in charge of his family. It's in the Moynihan report. Took it to the civil rights community. They said, no, the feminists wanted the man out of the house. Marriage is like slavery, they said. And Martin Luther King Jr. and them signed off on it. And in one generation, we went from 75% of our children being born in wedlock to 75% being born out of wedlock. Abortion. Close to 30 million black children been aborted. And he started with the Margaret Sanger Award. The decimation of the black community fall at their feet.
From the 1890s to the early 1950s, the black marriage rate rivaled that of whites. But after the passing of the civil rights, once we approach Roe v. Wade, the inception of it in 1973, we see today in 2024 that 75% of black homes are led by a single parent. Margaret Sanger was the founder of Planned Parenthood. In a letter to Dr. Clarence C.J. Gamble in 1939, said that she did not want the word to get out, that she wanted to exterminate the Negro population, and that she would use the charismatic preacher if it ever occurred to any of the more rebellious Negroes. She wanted to exterminate the black population. And so for every person who claims to be for black people and or woke, if you are pro-abortion, you are undoing the statement that you claim that you support.
You and your brothers and sisters were known as, quote, children of the devil, end quote. Could it be then that, in part at least, you were driven emotionally toward the birth control movement because of antagonism toward the church, because that was a way to fight the church?
No, I don't think I had anything of the kind in mind.
We live in a day where people believe that being pro-life is a white evangelical worldview. No, it's a biblical worldview. I can recall being at one of the busiest abortion clinics in the Southeast. The name of the clinic was a Woman's Choice Clinic of Raleigh. And there was a father who walked up to me one Saturday wearing a BLM t-shirt. And he said to me, "Why are you out here fighting a white man's agenda?" Now, on that Saturday morning, 70% of the people outside of the abortion clinic prepared to save these babies and fight for these babies and support these mamas if they kept the baby, they were white. But 80% of the individuals in the abortion clinic on that Saturday, including this gentleman's girlfriend, they were black. But he was a walking poster child for all things CRT, because in CRT you see racism in all things and in all places, especially when a black man is trying to save babies of all colors and creeds at an abortion clinic.
Most black people and most white people have an elementary concept of what Christianity is. They can't get really deep into it, but they understand the basic concepts of Christianity. I ask them, you're a Christian? Yes. You believe you're an heir of Jesus Christ? You're a child of God? Yes. Then how can you be oppressed? And they have to stop for a moment. And I say, take as much time as you need. If you're an heir of Jesus Christ and a child of God, how can someone be superior to you? Take as much time as you need. It's this elementary concept of Christianity that they get. Are you or are you not? This is binary. If you're an heir of Jesus Christ and a child of God, why are you marching asking the white man or the government for anything? Didn't he say he'd take care of you? Do you believe it?
When blacks were coming out of slavery, right, Christian blacks, why didn't they hate whites at that time? And why is it that the hate for whites has magnified over the years, especially as of recent?
Yeah, I think when you go back to the history of slavery, it's multifaceted. There were real relationships between real human beings that were happening, and every environment of slavery was not the same. So what you see depicted in perhaps a movie like Roots wasn't standardized activity for every single slave. There were some contexts where slaves were integrated into the family of whites. They were raising their children. They were taking care of different aspects of family. So they were very much a part of the family structure that was happening. And so when slavery ended, and you can read about this particularly in Booker T. Washington's book Up From Slavery, where he talks about what happened at the end of slavery. The Emancipation Proclamation comes.
This isn't about politics. It's about jobs, paychecks, and Georgia's future. If Senator
slaves are free, there were some decisions that were needed to be made. There were some blacks who said, I'm old. I've lived on the plantation for many, many years. Where am I going to go?
Yeah.
And so they made a decision to stay with their slave owners, and decided how they would integrate into the family structure that was there. There were younger slaves who said, "I'm out of here," and many of them would make the trek up north to either Chicago or New York or some other northern state or northern hemisphere. And then there were some who thought that they would make a go of it, only to find themselves having a difficult time struggling and going back to the plantation. I'm certain there were slaves who hated everything about slavery, who hated their slave owners, and rightfully so for the treatment that they suffered. But the reality is these were human beings who had very unique relationships with the people that they were in close proximity with, resulting from the relational aspect of slave and slave owner. And so it's not as cut and dry as I think some would have you to believe.
I got to stop there. I want to get to this part about it just shook me when John Amon Chukwu, I don't know how familiar you are with him. He's like the son-in-law of Bishop Wood, and I don't know if you're familiar with him. But John Amon Chukwu goes around to different schools and trying to get the pornographic material out of the schools, trying to get rid of it because he's so passionate about that. But he gave a statistic. He said 70% of the people outside the abortion clinic trying to save the babies that are in the womb of the people inside the abortion clinic, 70% of those people outside were white. 80% of the people inside the abortion clinic trying to get rid of their unborn children were black. You see, and I'm just saying, okay, you know, we're taught to that white men, some of us probably heard it from older people in our family growing up, MJ, don't trust them, they're bad, they're this, they're that. Well, why are just 70% of white people outside the abortion clinic trying to save these black babies? Why isn't it 70% black people, but it's 80% black people on the inside trying to get rid of the baby? Make that make sense. That I just want to talk about that for a moment. One of you guys can jump in.
Yeah, I kicked that to Derek. Go ahead, D.
My mind is just racing on the distraction techniques of the education system, and what they want you to learn is, I mean, all this is just so we've been living a lie. And like my wife and I have a credit repair business. I go into high schools and colleges and teach kids about finances and money and how to use credit appropriately and not be into debt, to build but when I was a contractor, I'd walk into a house of a family that was on food stamps, hurting for money, and literally every room, including the bathroom, had a 50-inch TV hanging on the wall. Like we're not taught how to not be a slave to society. No, it doesn't matter what the color of your skin is. They want you to be ignorant. They want to control you. True freedom is owning your own stuff and not having to worry about the person next door, what they're doing, because you can handle your own. But they don't want it doesn't matter what your race is, what your religion is. They don't want anybody to stand on their own 2 feet.
Exactly. Because you don't realize that the free stuff is a way to manipulate and control. They don't, people think, oh, they're being nice. They're giving me free healthcare, free college tuition, free, 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 free. And don't realize that this is just something to control. There's that saying that sometimes you can give someone a gift with strings attached. Well, when the left gives you a gift, there are chains attached. They're literal chains. And it's hard for people, the longer they've been in that government dependency, to get out of it. The longer they've been in it. It's meant to help people in a pinch, but it wasn't really meant for it to be lifelong. So what do you say, MJ?
Whenever I start, this topic is crazy for me because I literally have these conversations with people all the time, and it's like I always fall back to like the destruction of like the nuclear family, because I remember a time when I used to hear the ladies talking amongst each other and having conversations about how many children they want to have. Excited to be someone's wife. You know what I'm saying? So family has been devalued. And right now it's like, live your best life now. And if you want to have kids later, do it then. And so it's a never ending cycle of just, trying to run in this rat race, chasing and focusing on the wrong thing. And so there's no family structure, no family, no community. And so that's really, this is a tough one for me because like, this is where I kind of draw the line when it comes to, all those deletions.
It's also no accountability. I mean, if you can run around being promiscuous and not worry about pregnancy and children and everything like that, that's major life altering stuff. You're talking about lives being affected. What about all the other decisions that you can just make go away? I mean, you're just teaching people that it doesn't matter what your mistakes are. We'll let you just start fresh.
Yeah. I don't like that lack of accountability. You know, I mean, you will hear about, I don't know, and we'll get back to it. I got to tell the story real quick. On the left, they preach you don't have to take accountability because there was this viral TikTok video of this flight attendant that was twerking on an airline. It went viral. Do you remember that, MJ?
Yeah,
And
I do.
beautiful young woman, and she had gotten hired. She made it through the probationary period. She'd gotten promoted. But when she did that viral twerk in her uniform on the plane, it went viral and they fired her. And what was the first thing that came out of her mouth? She said, they did this to me because I'm black, or, you know, the color of my skin. They did this because of racism. And the first thing that came to my mind was they knew you were that. They knew you were black when they hired you. They saw you and you went to work and you got promoted. So it's not because of racism. It's because of what you did. You know, we just gotta take accountability and stop. It's like we almost want to say it's somebody else's fault that I messed up.
Yeah.
And it's not
And then
true.
there's the inappropriate side of me that just says that's because white women can't twerk like a black woman can.
Y'all just ignore Derek. I'm gonna say, are you serious right now? You have no good sense. But we gonna pray for you. We gonna get back to the documentary. It's so crazy.
Bible does not outlaw slavery. What the Bible does, it outlaws the maltreatment of your slaves. That's what the Bible makes clear from the Old Testament throughout the book of Philemon. Well, that whole book is an argument for the slave owner not being slave owner anymore. You're brother. The brother dynamic. I think going back to your question though, why did black people not hate white people? I think that's because a fundamental tenet of Christianity is love. Paul argued about that. He says, listen, I can have all these other gifts, all these other talents, but if I don't have love, I've got, he didn't say you didn't have a little, you got nothing. This whole topic of slavery brings up something that I say often, that it's easy to be like Jesus until you have to be like Jesus. You see, people who want to get all riled up about slavery, they don't want to be like Jesus, you see, and they know that the gospel challenges them to be like Jesus, even on that issue. There's something about being like Jesus in terms of the slaveholder dynamic and reality that rubs against our human nature to want revenge, to want vengeance, to want to get paid back for wrongs that are done to us. I mean, I sit here to you, and Virgil probably can say the same thing. I sit here in front of you right now as a descendant of both slaves and slave owners, you know, but that's human nature. Slavery is a doctrinal matter. It's not a social matter. It's not an anthropological matter. It's a doctrinal matter because slavery is the product of sin. So unless you want to deal with slavery within a theological lens, you're going to keep repeating these and regurgitating these same arguments that we're having about this issue.
What I hope others who hear this conversation don't take away is that we're minimizing the egregious nature of slavery, the absolute evil that is slavery, but that's a part of the human condition. That's sin.
Now, V, let's keep it real. Yeah, we don't want anybody to mishear us or misunderstand us. We do appreciate the gravity of the reality of slavery. But listen, when you look at slavery, especially as it relates to its presence in America, there wouldn't have been slavery in America if it weren't for black people who look like us.
Come on.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
The entire genesis of slavery going back to Africa, especially West Africa, where my roots trace back to, it was people who looked like us who were transacting with Europeans to conquer their own people, treat them as materiel, to sell, place on these ships, export them to the Americas. You look at the top 10 nations that participate in the transatlantic slave trade. The United States ranks number 9. You know who number 1 is? Brazil. Do you hear anybody in America now hollering for reparations from Brazil?
Nobody.
From the Caribbeans? Jamaica?
Come on.
No. See, nobody wants these facts because it destroys their victimhood.
At this moment, Woodrow Wilson had reached a zenith of intellectual and spiritual leadership never before achieved by any world statesman.
Woodrow Wilson was a bigot, even by the standards of the day. He was off the charts. The first movie that was shown in the White House was Birth of a Nation, which celebrated the rise of the Klan that was fighting these predatory black men that were trying to rape white women. That's how the Klan was portrayed. That's how blacks were portrayed in that film.
I just happen to have a volume of Woodrow Wilson. Did you ever read what he has to say about it?
The white men were roused by a mere instinct of self-preservation, until at last there had sprung into existence a great Ku Klux Klan, a veritable empire of the South, to protect the Southern country.
Woodrow Wilson showed it in the White House. Again, the first movie ever to be shown in the White House. And he said the film, quote, caught lightning in a bottle, close quote, indicating it was true. He wasn't a member, as sometimes people accuse him of having been, but he was certainly sympathetic to the Klan. Well, let's see. Democrats were the party of slavery, the party of the Confederacy. Democrats founded the KKK. I'm not saying the Democratic Party did, but Democrats founded the KKK. Democrats are the party of Jim Crow. They are the party that started the so-called war on poverty. And in 1965, 25% of black kids entered the world without a father in the home, married to the mother. Now that number is 70%. And what Lyndon Johnson did, I would like to believe with the best of intentions, is to incentivize women to marry the government and incentivize men to abandon their financial and moral responsibility.
It's gotten to a point where people really think that the church is supposed to be a political arm of the Democratic Party. They're supposed to do it. They don't understand the ecclesiastical calling of the church to get us prepared to live forever in the presence of Jesus Christ, to get disciples for Christ. And there's a crazy dichotomy with it, because if you look at the Christian faith, you understand that Jesus Christ told us that we should not be concerned at all about how we're viewed by man. You know, dreaming about a day you won't be judged by the color of your skin, being judged by man. He told us that we shouldn't care about how these people feel about us. We should love them. If they don't love us, that's fine. We should love them. That we shouldn't be stalking. We shouldn't be coercing people. We should change their heart. Because right now, we still believe that we can put the gun to the head. We can do sit-ins. We can do boycotts and turn people to our way. No, that's not the Christian way. The Christian way is through love, forbearance, showing them the proper example. And it's a human element involved in that we seem to forget. And of all the sad things now in America, that's the saddest. It's an opportunity now for all of us to come together with the technology, with what we know, with what we have discovered in the past. They won't allow it. They are going to every day find the smallest thing, and they're going to tell black people, white America hates you. Don't trust them. Stay here in these ghettos. Trust us. Stay on government programs. Stay in public education. Trust us. So most black preachers get their power. They want to keep their congregations. They don't want them integrating or going into white, quote unquote, white churches. The NAACP and these civil rights groups got to have strife. That's how they raise their money. BLM and all of them. And then the black politician, that's how they get their votes. A white man is evil. White Republicans are racist. America is racist. We'll take care of you. They profit from it. It started in the civil rights movement. It continues until today. The only thing that will break it is the love and the blood of Jesus Christ. And that's what I work toward every day.
All right, I'm gonna, pretty much stop it right there. But that was powerful. So many things came to my mind right there, because he was talking about pushing people, protesting, boycotting, trying to make people give you what you want. That made me think of Jamal Bryant at New Birth Ministries in Atlanta, Georgia, with the Target boycott. You remember? And then the National Baptist Convention settled with Target for it was $300,000, but it was divided up between 4 of the Baptist organizations, so each one got $75,000. And Jamal Bryant was livid, because he was like, you didn't run that by me. We can't sell ourselves short. He just really told on himself that he is a literal sellout, in my opinion. That man right there, he's doing exactly what Mr. Ellison is speaking against, forcing. And his doctrine in his church is kind of whack anyway. And that brings me back to that progressive Baptist church, the word progressive. That was Martin Luther King's, because what happened at the National Baptist Convention in the early 1960s. I was like, what? He did that too? I said, wow, this is crazy. This is absolutely crazy. And Raphael Warnock, because the senator out of Georgia belongs to he's a minister and he belongs to the same church, that Progressive Baptist Church, and he's a Democrat supporting abortion, the alphabet stuff. You see what I'm saying? It is just, it all makes sense now once you know the truth, because now you see similarities from way back then to now. It's still the same formula. It's the same formula. I mean, go by way of the church. And because black people were very religious at one point.
Yeah. It's the same playbook. I remember every election cycle. Every election cycle they would show up. And they would sit in the pulpit and then do their little speech. I used to think it was so funny. And back then I didn't know anything about politics. So it was so boring to me and it didn't make no sense. And then you didn't see him again until, 2 years later. You know what I mean? Or whatever that next cycle was. I always thought it was just so funny, but that last part, Linda B, was powerful. And it's just so much said, and it's so many thoughts that came to mind as I was watching, and to think about, I was, before they got to the part, I was thinking about like, wow, yeah, of course slavery was a thing, right? No, there's no denying it, but come on. It's 400 years ago. Linda B is 400. It's 400 years since it started. Like, let alone when it ended, but 400 years ago when this was going on. And it's like, at what point are you gonna be like, okay, that was 400 years ago, but I keep going back to what are we doing now? And so,
what are you doing now? We don't even know the truth behind that. We weren't told the truth about that either. Because everybody was involved in slavery at some point. That was, I mean, seriously, everybody. People enslaving people who look exactly like them. The black Africans went and sold black people that they had already subjugated and had in slavery to the Europeans. And that's just the truth of it. We were already subjugated, some of us, before we got to the Western Hemisphere. So we just need to know the truth and not cling onto being a victim. I just, it's just crazy wild. What do you say, Derek?
Man, the words that keep ringing in my head was that pastor there at the end, and he kept saying, or he said it one time, but in my head it just played over and over that we need to get back to the basics and start showing love again. And I don't know if preach is the right word, but anybody that'll listen to me, I don't have to preach Christianity. I don't have to preach God. I have to show love, because God is love. And if you're not showing love, if you're not giving love, you're not giving God an opportunity to do his work. I can't do the things that God can do. I can show love to others and let God do his thing, because he is way more powerful than I could ever even, like, my imagination is, I mean, not even quite the faith of a mustard seed. You know what I mean? And so if we're not showing love to people, we're not allowing God to work. And that's literally what was happening right before our eyes, was God was not able to work because Satan and the left were taking your thoughts and taking your minds and taking your attention away from giving love and showing love. And God was removed from the equation because of
it. So much we can learn for just keeping things kind of simple. Love God with everything in you, love everyone as yourself, and people who know me know that I really don't care what anybody looks like. I just so don't care. I mean, people get upset when they find out you didn't vote a certain way, I'm like, I don't look at things like that. I'm looking at policy. What are you thinking? What is up with this? This literally makes no sense. And we get emotional about that. Some of us black folks do. I'm just being 100%. Y'all know who y'all are out there, getting all emotional. You can't have a conversation, getting all mad in the comment section, getting all mad. I'm like, I'm cool. We can agree to disagree. And you guys said it last night. The problem with liberals is that you can't agree to disagree. They just want you to agree. I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. You're gonna have to be grown-ups here and realize that not everybody thinks the same, But I really appreciate you guys coming onto the show tonight. Did you want to have any last words before we wrap this up?
I'm gonna throw this
Yeah.
to MJ because he always throwing it to me.
Yeah, no, Linda B, I always love coming on and kicking it with you. And this,
Oh.
I really enjoyed tonight. Tonight was even more powerful than last night. And, this is a really great series to kind of review. There's a lot of things that I didn't even know. So I didn't know MLK was kicked out, of like the church, and he had to start his own thing. I never heard that before. So, so it's just crazy. All these years of thinking one thing, and then to find out that it wasn't that thing, and it was like, what was the whole point of that?
Yeah. It's just crazy that he presented himself as a Baptist minister. Baptists believe in the virgin birth, the resurrection, the divinity of Jesus Christ, but he was none of those things. He was more of a Buddhist.
And on top of that, he had 45 girlfriends. I mean, I don't know how to feel about that.
And
I
also,
don't know whether to be impressed or like, I don't know. Like, no, I'm joking, Linda B.
I know you are. Don't be impressed.
But 45 though.
But it came out.
That's a lot.
It came out that he was because there's this book I told you about called The Wall Thing to Come Tumbling Down by Ralph Abernathy, who was close to King. He said King was in an orgy the night before he was assassinated.
Oh yeah.
So that's I'm like, Lord, did he even make it to the pearly? That I'm just did you even make it to the pearly gates? My goodness. But all right, you guys, I'm gonna go ahead and that little, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, you can. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and end it now. And I appreciate you guys joining me. And my warriors, guys, thanks. I hope you guys enjoyed everything. I'm going to be pushing out some videos tomorrow. We will be back tomorrow, same time, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to do episode 3 of this series. We'll be back Monday to do the final episode. All right, guys. You all be blessed. Love God, your families, the United States of America. And as they always say, march on, warriors. Good night, everybody.